5 Network. This is Open Line.
Good evening and welcome to Open Line. I'm Emily Lux and thank you so much for joining us on this cold and rainy evening. We appreciate you tuning in. We do have a hot topic to talk about tonight, gay marriage, and specifically a bill that was just filed in the Tennessee legislature, the Tennessee Natural Marriage Defense Act. And this would define a natural marriage as between a man and a woman. Of course, we know there's going to be lots of strong opinions on this. We want to hear from you over the course of the next hour. We'll have the phone number on the screen for you. You can give us a call at 615-737-PLUS. We definitely want to hear from you. We also want to hear from our guest tonight, Chris Sanders, the Executive Director of the Tennessee Equality Project. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you for having me again.
And we want to talk about this bill. Let's start with a little bit about what this involves and how you understand what this consists of.
Sure. We've seen this bill over the last few legislative sessions, and this is in reaction to the 2015 Obergefell Supreme Court ruling that struck down bans on same-sex marriages in the states across the United States. Tennessee's constitutional amendment and statute were specifically struck down because they were directly a part of the cases from the Sixth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, similar to Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan. So they were rolled up into that case, and they were very much a part of that decision. This bill would attempt to nullify that Supreme Court ruling, and it would say that the Attorney General would not defend any definition of marriage other than one man, one woman at a time marriage. No local agency or any government official can give force or effect to any marriage other than a so-called natural marriage, and that when a marriage license is submitted, vital records will check to see whether the parties are, I guess, the appropriate gender and can enter into a natural marriage. But of course, if we're using a bunch of electronic records, we begin to escape the natural world very quickly, I would say.
And we should note this bill is sponsored by Senator Mark Pody, a Republican from Lebanon, as well as Representative Jerry Sexton, a Republican from Beth Station. And we have heard from them off and on throughout the course of this week. As you mentioned, it has come up before. Senator Pody has said that marriage is a state issue. He believes that the Supreme Court overstepped its authority in that 2015 ruling, making that ruling, I guess, unconstitutional, which is why he is arguing Tennessee can step in and do this. Your reaction to his take on that?
Well, we fought a civil war over this issue in this country, and we have decided that, in fact, states cannot nullify opinions of the Supreme Court or federal law. So there is federal supremacy. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution additionally says that no state shall make or enforce any law that, several words, violate equal protection. So in the Supreme Court's view, and in my view, the marriage law that Tennessee had was not equal protection. It was discriminatory. So that was properly struck down. I don't think that the senator and Representative Jerry Sexton, either one, have a good legal argument to make. But I do think that this is part of an effort that is percolating on the far right to try to figure out how to either chip away at marriage equality or get the issue eventually back before the courts. And of course, as we know, under this current president, the courts are changing. This president is getting to appoint a number of district and circuit court judges and some Supreme Court justices. So I think this may be part of a long-term strategy.
Okay. We do have some calls coming in. Let's go ahead and start with that. We want to hear from you, starting with Shirley. You are live on Open Line. What's your question?
Well, I'm calling in support of the Natural Marriage Act law proposed. I think the law should be based on the will of the people, and the Supreme Court, I think that, you know, they should base their laws on the will of the people.
Okay. Thank you for calling, Shirley.
I quite agree. And the will of the people put the 14th Amendment in the Constitution of the United States as our fundamental law. So that means that trumps the will of people in individual states. So I would concur in principle, but in application I would differ from you, Shirley.
Okay. Let's go to Paul. Paul, you're live on Open Line. What's your question tonight?
Hello?
Hi, Paul. Can you hear us? You're live on Open Line.
Yes, ma'am. I was just wondering, they think, gay marriage is so bad, but, I mean, they believe in long-time marriage.
Right. And Paul, are you getting at the point that there are a lot of same-sex couples out there who have been together a long time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Thank you for that comment.
And that's a great point. I mean, people who are against same-sex marriage, marriage equality, try to point out these fundamental differences. But really the way couples live their lives are very much the same. I mean, some raise children, some don't. You're there for each other when one of you is sick. You're a financial support to one another. Love, of course, you hope, is a big part of the marriage that brings you together and keeps you together. But it's also just the mutual support and trying to make it last and make it work. So I really appreciate you bringing up that point.
Okay. Let's go to Gary. Gary, you're live on Open Line. Thanks for calling.
Hi.
Did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I'm just very grateful that people are standing up against gay marriage.
Okay, and explain your concerns.
Yeah. Well, they try and push their gay agenda on people that really don't need to be pushed on.
And has that impacted you personally?
No, because I won't stand for it. But in a way, because you have to act a certain way or be a certain way for people not to be offended. But it's just a bunch of crap, because I think that
you can say anything you want as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've been around a while and I've heard it all. So you are welcome to speak your piece. That doesn't mean we'll agree at the end of it, but I think we welcome your comment.
Okay. Let's go to Scott. Scott, you're live on Open Line. Thanks for calling us.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Thanks for calling.
My comment, I always thought that a marriage was really to just legitimize your children so you didn't have children out of wedlock. And since gay people can't have children, does it really matter if they get married? I think they really just want to be married for the benefits of it. And I'm a veteran, and I just can't imagine some other man working and going to combat and then coming back and being married to another man, and that man dies, and a man that absolutely did nothing for his country gets benefits.
I don't really understand the logic of that point at all, because first of all, there are a lot of same-sex couples who do have children, whether from a previous marriage or they've adopted or they've used various reproductive technologies and resources. So there are same-sex couples, lots of them, particularly in the South, raising children, first of all. Second of all, it's odd to me that you might bring up the military example, because military spouses, regardless of their gender, go through a great deal. They move around the country. They worry about that spouse's safety. As you know, the pay is not exorbitant by any means, so it's not like you're making a lot of money. There's a lot of sacrifice that military spouses put in, regardless of their gender and the type of marriage they have. So I can't agree with the comment, but I think it opens up a whole realm of discussion illuminating just how similar same-sex couples are to different sex couples.
And hypothetically, if this bill passed and there was a same-sex couple that wanted to get married, what would happen?
Well, what would happen is there would probably be local and state government officials who would put the law into effect, and immediately there would be a lawsuit in federal district court, and I suspect a federal judge would enjoin enforcement of this law, and it would go further in the courts. We don't think that would make it to the Supreme Court, but it might. But I think part of the dream scenario is, in fact, this and some other efforts around the country would get the marriage issue back in front of a more friendly Supreme Court down the road, and maybe get it struck down or changed in certain key points.
Okay. Let's go to Charles. Charles, thanks for calling. You're live on Open Line.
Yes, I'm Charles.
Go ahead. Did you have a question or comment?
I have a question. Does the new marriage bill say anything about marriage between a man and a woman, where either the man or a woman had a sex change and was born the same gender as their spouse?
Okay.
In a way, there is a provision of this bill that deals with the transmission of the marriage license to vital records. And here's the part where you have to follow for a second. Vital Records is a state office. In Tennessee, a transgender person cannot change the sex on their birth certificate. So if you were born in Tennessee and you transitioned, the state would go by the gender on your birth certificate. Now, right now, that doesn't matter in terms of marriage, because in Tennessee you can have a same-sex or a different-sex marriage. Either way. Under this bill, you would only be able to have a different-sex marriage. You would only be able to marry someone of the so-called opposite sex, is the traditional language.
Okay. Let's go to Christy. You are live on Open Line. Thanks for calling us tonight.
Hi.
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 I have a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, the gay marriage, I don't find it, right. I mean, it's against the Bible, for one, and another is the fact, my daughter, for the last 3 years, I'll just put it out there, you turn on the TV and it's a man and a man kissing, or it'll be a woman and a woman on your local TV channels now. And I don't see how that's right, because, I know times change, but when you go back years ago, stuff like that was prohibited.
Well, if you go back far enough, there was no TV, of course. So,
well, I'm talking about back, say for instance, when Elvis was, on the Ed Sullivan Show.
He was controversial himself.
Oh. But I don't find it right to have it thrown in your face. My daughter, she goes to school, she deals with it, and they got even clubs for that kind of stuff, and I just don't find that right.
Okay.
Well,
thank you for calling and sharing your opinion.
But I think, if you reflect on your own views and you know people who share your views, you can see very easily why a club might be necessary, because there are so many people like you who are, frankly, not accepting and perhaps ready to discriminate in the public sector. So that's why those clubs are necessary. Now, in terms of the Bible, it's an extremely important book to me. I'm a Christian, but I suspect you and I would have very different interpretations of the book. And the question for everyone who's viewing the program and who lives in our state is, what should our laws be based on? Should our laws be based on one tradition's sacred book and a certain interpretation of it? Or should it be based upon a reasonable discussion of the issues and the needs that face us as Tennesseans without recourse to specific divine revelation that's not available to other people? And I think that's really where we have to draw the line. What is our public policy going to be based on?
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you for all of your calls. We'll get back with you in just a few minutes. Stay with us.